Hi, it's Sandy Wyllie. Welcome to my mental health channel, 50 Shades of Black and White, where I try to wipe away the stigma of mental illness by talking about my own experiences having borderline personality disorder as a patient for almost 20 years. I talk about narcissism, which I'm going to do today. I talk about bipolar, schizophrenia. I talk about therapy, my personal experiences with unethical therapists and post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety attacks, and a plethora of other topics related to mental health. But I only come on here on my channel as a former patient. I am not a therapist. I do not hold a degree in psychology, so I cannot give you anything except my own personal experiences and opinions. So please be aware of that. I only ask one thing of you, and that is to show kindness in the comments. Please show kindness to me, to yourself, and to everyone else. Please be kind. Please be respectful. If you like what you see, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please join my channel. It's 100% free. So today, what I'm going to talk about is, why do borderline people always, or not always, more than likely choose partners who have narcissistic personality disorder? It's like we're the perfect, like, Frankenstein and bride match. I might laugh at that, but that's no funny matter. You see, you always pick who, and you're not doing this consciously, people that resemble your parents, because you're trying to correct that experience that you couldn't as a child. This is why people become psychologists, all right, psychiatrists, therapists, all right. They go into this field to heal themselves. This is true. This is true. Because they have unresolved traumas from their childhood. Now, a good majority of us have unresolved traumas from childhood. So, most of us either become therapists or go see therapists, or both. You know how many therapists are in their own therapy because they're so, messed up? I've known them personally. I've seen them. One time, I was going to this therapist, Dr. Mark Gear, and I saw my old therapist, the one I reported to the licensing board, Dr. Eugene Newman. I saw him come out of Dr. Mark Gear's office, and it wasn't a consultation or anything. He was his patient, because I confronted Dr. Mark Gear. And I said, do you know that that was my old psychologist, who's now your patient? And he said, do you want me to switch time so you won't have to run into him? And I said, no, don't bother with it. But that's, and I've always said, when I made the complaint to the licensing board, that psychologist needs to get into his own therapy, because he's narcissistic and so messed up. Most psychologists are narcissistic. So how are they going to help us, people who have borderline personality disorder? And why do we always pick narcissistic therapists or narcissistic boyfriends? I did. I picked narcissistic boyfriends, and I picked narcissistic psychologists. And I'm giving you the answer because we're trying to recreate our childhood over again to make a corrective, restorative experience. We're not even doing this consciously. We're used to, like, living in chaos, most of us, because we've been a majority of people walking the planet on 2 feet have been severely traumatized by their childhood. Why do you think that I have borderline personality disorder? Because of my childhood. I had a horrific, abusive, traumatic childhood. And what happened was I went to therapy and I got re-traumatized by my unethical psychologist. So I repeated my childhood all over again and I never healed. So how can we even heal? First of all, you have to see, you have to be aware of what you're doing. I'm 58 years old. It took me a very, very long time to be aware of what I was doing, of why I was making the choices that I was making. That was very unhealthy. And I noticed that with the psychologist who I had a 2-year sexual relationship with, I did go to the licensing board, and he was going to lose his license because I talked to the people at the board. But he died before then. But I had a lawsuit out against him, and I won and got $80,000 before he died. But he didn't lose his license. He died first, but he was very, very close to losing his license. Now, at the time, I didn't know, but he was a combination of my mother and my father. And, I relived that trauma over again in the, unethical relationship that I had with him. He was like my mother in that he used to swear and spit in my face. My mother used to swear at me when I was a little girl and spit in my face and call me horrible names. When I was a little girl, she used to call me rhymes with bore. I'm just afraid I'll be censored and I won't get monetized if I actually say it. Sock, sucker. Rhymes with sock. See, I can't say the actual words because then they will ban the video. She used to say F you to a little girl who did nothing. I don't know. Maybe I didn't pick up a toy. I didn't do anything to warrant being sworn and spit in my face and beaten up to a pulp till I was bloody and had, welts. I didn't do anything. I was a little girl. So this is what repeated in my relationship with Dr. James Barbario. He did the same exact thing as my mother. He was that abusive, swearing F you. This was out in public, in broad daylight, at the Arnold Arboretum. We're walking around, there's elderly people out there walking around, and he's there like this, F you, swearing. I'm not going to swear because my husband and son are working in their, but, he was screaming. The elderly people looking at him, and I told them, I'm going to call the police. I had my phone. I was going to call the police on him because I was frightened to death. He used to push me around, and this would mimic my mother. Now, he also resembled that of my father. When he used to pick me up, I was married and I had a son at home at the time. He picked me up in his, convertible, black, shiny, expensive sports car, roaring down the street. And, I'd get in. He used to, like my father coming home from work every day. He'd come home with a real puss on his face. And right away, as soon as he walked in the door, my mother started screaming and swearing and throwing things at him. Because it's like, I cooked and slaved, all day over this hot stove to feed you, and you come in with this long puss. Every Saturday night, when Jim, Dr. James Barbario, Jim, picked me up, it would be the same exact thing as my dad coming home from work. He'd have a long puss on his face, and I'd say, hi, how are you? I'm tired. I worked hard. He'd be the same way my dad was. Now, at the time, I didn't put this all together, what was going on. why this was unfolding in the way that it was. But now, because I've separated myself from therapists in therapy for 2.5 years, and I've analyzed every night, I have severe insomnia. I lie awake, and you're lying there trying to fall asleep. Some of you guys know how it is when you have that insomnia. And if you're borderline, you overthink, right? And I just don't overthink during the daytime. Oh, I overthink 24/7, okay? So when I have insomnia and I'm lying there wide awake in bed like this, I'm constantly rehashing everything, all the abuse, not just my childhood abuse. I still have nightmares, but the abuse by my therapist, and I still have nightmares from my psychologist that severely abused me too. And I'm realizing what I did, why I attracted narcissistic psychologists, narcissistic people in my life. And it was because I was severely traumatized and abused as a child, coming from a household with a schizophrenic father who was, in and out of mental institutions, locked away, who left me with a narcissistic, abusive mother. My mother was narcissistic. So, see, that's all I knew. So to me, that was the normal. That was normal. It's like this, and for someone who hasn't been abused and don't understand a thing that I'm saying, like saying, why would you want to go through that again? It doesn't make any sense. Imagine if you were locked up in a closet, a very dark closet, okay, pitch black, complete solitude. Then someone comes along and opens the door. Just the light from that alone would blind you. It would blind you because your eyes have not adjusted to the dark. Because you've been in the dark for so long, that's where you feel comfortable. That's where you feel at home. You feel at home in the dark because that's where you've been all your life, in the dark. If someone good comes along and opens the door, then it's blinding, and it's like that, Now, how do you explain my husband? Well, I just was lucky. My best friend Julia in college introduced me to him, and that was it. That's history. But it wasn't like I fell in love with him or I had sparks or chemistry. It was that I was 18 going on 19. No, that's from the Sound of Music, but I'm 16 going on 17. But I was 18 going on 19, and I was a virgin. I've never dated a boy. I never kissed a boy. I never been with a boy. And here is my husband, who is in the same boat, never been with a girl. And, he was really nice, and he showed a lot of interest in me, and I trusted him, and I thought he was very good husband material, and, I haven't been proven wrong since. But it was more a logical choice, marrying my husband, than like a passionate or, like I had blinders on and, like that. That's why I got involved with my psychologist, Dr. James Barbaria, because I threw caution to the wind and was wrapped up, for not the first time. The first time was Dr. Richard Geist. And those two psychologists, I was wrapped up in the passion and the chemistry and the, well, you know how it is if you've been in love, right? You know how you feel. I never had those feelings, I never been in a relationship where I felt passionate toward the man and it was returned, like I explained in one video, I had many infatuations, but they weren't returned. It was only one-sided. I was infatuated with them and they didn't want nothing to do with me. But, so we are picking people that resemble our parents, and we're, reliving our childhoods over again. And you need to see the pattern, okay, that you are creating. So that's the first bit of advice I give to you. Recognize the pattern. You know, you cannot break a pattern unless you recognize that there is one. Okay, you can't break anything. You know, I can't, like, if I don't think I have it, if someone doesn't think they have an eating problem or they overeat, how are they going to lose weight? They're going to say, nothing wrong with the way I eat. You know, I have a cheeseburger and fries for lunch. You know, I come home and I have a whole pizza. That's my dinner. See, so if they don't recognize the pattern of what they're doing, then they can't break that because they don't see. You have to see. If you've had problems with relationships in the past, you can analyze each and every one of those relationships, and there'll always be a common thread. There'll always be a common denominator in those relationships. It doesn't mean that you can, shut yourself off and say, well, that's it. All people are jerks and I'm never going to have another relationship. Is that you should recognize the pattern in those relationships so you don't repeat them. Now, I've recognized all the patterns in my friendships with women and in other areas of my life. So it doesn't mean like I'm saying I'm never going to have friends again. I'm just saying that I will never repeat those patterns. So that I have high standards now. I'm not like shutting the door on everyone. I'm just saying my standards are high, so I'm not going to fall into those same, negative patterns that I did before. I have high boundaries now. Before, I never even had boundaries. You know why I never had boundaries? Because I never grew up with boundaries. I had a mother that came in my room and tore my room apart. Never had any privacy. Even as I was 18, 19, 20, and a so-called adult, never had any privacy whatsoever, never had any respected boundaries. So, even my aunts would, pinch my cheek and hurt me. Or, I had one aunt, grab my, oh, look at, you're developing boobies, that's sexual abuse. Okay. You might think, oh, it's just a little girl. It's just a child. I don't mean it sexually. I'm just saying, oh, it's still sexual abuse. It's, I never grew up with boundaries, so I never learned boundaries. It took a long time to figure them out because I had to figure out everything on my own, okay, because therapists abused me. I never learned them anything like that in childhood because I wasn't respected. So I had to learn it myself at a very, very late age. But you know what they say, better late than never, right? Better late than never. So just recognize patterns in your life, and then once you know what you can be corrective not to go into that same route. You can take a different way, right? Like if you walk down this road and you get attacked by wolves, you're not going to walk down that road again. If you walk down this road and there's snakes, okay? So you're going to know which roads to avoid, and you walk down this road and it's nice and serene and peaceful, and then you're going to make sure that you look before you leap. Look before you leap. So yeah, that all goes back to trying to recreate our childhoods, picking the same partners or friends or as our parents, and not reliving the trauma because that seems normal to us. That's what we're used to. And everyone, I don't know why this is, but we'd rather the devil we know than the devil we don't know. We'd rather stay with something, even if it's bad for us, because it's known to us. See, there's some comfort. People don't like change, even change for the better. People don't like change. That's why they stay in relationships years and years when it's clear that the relationship is over. because they'd rather be in the familiar, even though the familiar is harmful, than out there in the unfamiliar, you know? It's just like we're creatures of habit. For most of us are. We don't like change. We're afraid of the unknown. That's why everyone is afraid of death. Not everyone. There's no, black or white. That's the name of my channel. But that's why we're afraid of death, because we don't know what happens, right? No one has come back and told us definitively this is how it is. So a lot of people stay in relationships much, much longer than they have to because they're so afraid of the unknown. Even when it's harmful to be in the relationship, they feel safer knowing what's next, just knowing what's next, than going out there and, not knowing anything, But you're going to have to learn to get to know yourself. Okay, listen to those if you've made it this far in the video in 21 minutes. You got to learn to know yourself. You can't really know anyone else unless you know yourself first. So my advice to you is to get to learn to know yourself first. All right? Take some time. Get to know you. What makes you tick, okay? Look at your past, look at your patterns, what you've done, who you chose to be with. Get to learn to know yourself. You know why? Because you're really someone worth knowing. I'll leave you on that positive note. Until next time,